I told you I was going to go back to talking about my chickens. um, well, I had a comment the other day on one of my old videos that actually, when I recorded that video, I was really sick. And I think sometimes when I'm sick, I really am more able to tell the truth in a way. And it was my I don't want to be an INFJ anymore, and it did get a few more views than I was used to at that point in my channel, but it's an older video. Of course my dog is eating. I was thinking, let's see if we can get through a video without my dog making all kinds of noise. Hang on just a second. All right, so I'll read you the comment and then I'll talk about my chickens. Here's the comment. Then quit worrying about it and find something else to capture your attention. I just think you have a severe case of OCD, not INFJ. This could make a huge difference in your life once you realize this. And yeah, a few weeks ago that comment probably would have bothered me. And now I guess I'm getting a little thicker skin, as you need to when you post channels on YouTube and expect people to view them, because they're going to make comments that you disagree with or aren't necessarily nice, and I don't think that comment was mean-spirited. I think he's trying to help or she's trying to help. But it got me thinking, could the way that we think and kind of obsess over certain things, and I refer to it as seasons, I get into seasons of being obsessed with something and researching it and checking into it, and could that be seen as kind of an obsessive compulsive type thing? And I think it could. I mean, it could be viewed that way because, I almost get in like one mindset with a certain topic or a certain ideal, and then I just look into it to the point that, it becomes like an obsession for a while, for a season, for a little while. And then I either have researched it to the point that my brain feels satisfied, or I move on because maybe it wasn't really working for me, or what I thought I would maybe glean from all of that knowledge, didn't pan out or something. I don't know. I can't really explain why I would stop being obsessed over something. And I have researched OCD, and I know I don't have that. I do know a few people with it. And yeah, that's definitely a whole different animal there. And my hands are kind of stained purple from work yesterday, so if you're seeing an odd color there, I had some bright purple hair color to do yesterday, and yeah, when you shampoo it, it kind of stains your hands for a little bit. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of run down, I think we are definitely researching people. I know that I am, and I'm sure that you guys will share that you are as well. Because I'm finding out that we are so similar in habits. It's kind of creepy. Not creepy, but a little bit, it's just crazy to me to think that, there's this group of people that are so similar all over the world. And that's just how our brain is processing. So I think we do get kind of stuck on something for a while. And I used to say or think that the wanting to know why, who, where, and how does it work, and how can it work for me, I used to think that was kind of the bane of my existence. But it's also kind of like the maybe meaning of my existence too, because having to figure things out more than just being told, like, this is how we do it, but why? And where did that start? And how can we improve that? And how is that going to be sustainable for longer than, this period of time? That is always the questions that draws me to continue to research something. So it reminded me of kind of my evolution, I guess, my change in my chickens and how I care for them. So I thought I would tell you a story about my chickens, why I have them, how I've cared for them, and what led me to care for them in the way that I do. And I think this kind of obsessive sort of behavior is why we're all here, because we tried to figure ourselves out at one point maybe and found out, oh, I'm this thing called an INFJ. And that makes us, read articles, watch YouTube videos about the topic. We start out with, or at least I did, start out with, the informational ones, the ones that are lists that tell you all these traits. And you're like, oh my gosh, that is me. How is this person reading my mind? How do they know what I'm thinking? How do they know how I've lived my entire life? And then from that, I have gone into the more like in-depth kind of, I'm past the list. I still do videos that are lists because I think they're helpful for people that are just discovering things. But then we go back into like, how do we really work? What's the deep part, and what is the, belief system, and where did it come from, and what is really on our hearts, and, what are we made for? And, that's where that's kind of going. But anyway, we're talking about chickens today. So for me, when I'm going to start researching something, or when my mind gets captivated with something, it usually starts out with there's a problem. So getting chickens started with me contracting mono at age 30. And at age 30, I had 3 young children, and I was very, very ill with this mono. And they told me I had mono after being sick for a few weeks, and they told me, all the things you need to do with mono. And of course, I didn't do that because I had 3 children, and I was too busy to rest and too busy to take care of myself. Well, I ended up in the hospital and ended up losing about 15 pounds, which on my frame, I don't have it to lose, or I didn't at that time. So I ended up very, very sick. And then, conventional medicine wasn't really working. I wasn't getting better. And a year later, I still felt ill. So I ended up at a nutritionist. And a clinical nutritionist, like alternative medicine type nutritionist, where they talk about what you're going to eat. And so then I became fascinated and obsessed with nutrition for a while. So I studied everything I could. I read all the books that they recommended. I did my own research. I just became fascinated with nutrition. And I've always been kind of stuck on... I don't know what word to use exactly, but I've always been kind of obsessed with like apocalyptic, maybe end times, and of course right now that's a big topic in the news and in different social media circles. So that I'm all about that for some reason. So I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, like, okay, if the power grid goes down, if things go back to like the Stone Age, what are we going to do to survive? So I always have like I'm not a prepper or anything, but I've always kind of had a plan in my head of how we would survive. And, I grow vegetables, and I've always kind of done that. I've always been growing things, and we live out in the country. But there's always this plan. So this nutrition thing really fed into that, because of course they talk about like organic things and growing your own food and having things that are more sustainable and, less chemically derived and all that stuff. So I started buying eggs from a local farmer, and we found out that we really, really liked them. And so that, of course, for me, I'm like, if I'm going to do something, I'd rather do it myself. So I decided I would get some chickens. And so I got 4 chickens, and I had them for a little while, and, I'm buying feed for them at the feed store. And then my brain starts going, and I had at one other point in the past, I had an obsession with pioneer women and stories of the women that went out and settled our country and, lived very simple, very difficult lives. And how did they survive? And they always had chickens. And that they were not going out and buying, bags and bags and bags of chicken feed. So that got me researching, how did these people feed their chickens in the early 1900s. So researching and, just kind of being obsessed with changing the way I fed my chickens, because I thought, well, it can't be healthy for them to be eating this super processed, grain, whatever feed that I'm picking up at a feed store that has God knows what in it. So, for a season, I was obsessed with trying to figure out how to feed my chickens differently, a more natural diet. And in my research, I found out, that, of course, 100 years ago, the chickens that people owned were very, very different than the ones that people typically own now. So that got me into searching about, heritage breed chickens and chickens that have not been bred to be super producers, the ones that are more self-sufficient, the ones that are more hardy. And so then, of course, I'm like looking and trying to find if are other people feeding their chickens this way. Is there any way possible to get away from this grain-based diet? Is that their natural diet? Well, it's not, because, chickens originally in the wild would not have been able to find grain, big, huge bags of grain, or even, and of course they do eat grain. I mean, they would go by and eat seeds off of plants and stuff. But so I probably did this for an entire winter, just obsessing over how am I going to feed my chickens. And as I'm saying this, it sounds so silly, but I think that, and now my chickens are on this grain-free diet, and that is how I feed them. It is a little bit more difficult, than it would be to just go to the feed store and buy them grain. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking if the power grid goes down, if, the proverbial crap hits the fan and everything falls apart, my chickens will survive and I will have a healthy source of protein for my family. And also, chickens produce fertilizer. They have bedding, they have poop, and that produces fertilizer for my vegetable gardens. So no use for chemical fertilizers and bringing in, other things. So, but yeah, that's kind of my chicken story. I'm sure there was more to it than that, but we do get, or at least I do get, into time periods where I get obsessed with things and I really don't want to research or look into anything else. And the INFJ, being an INFJ and watching videos about it was that for me for a while. And now I've kind of moved on to coronavirus, which I need to, be done with, because I think we're going to just see how that unfolds. And I've been researching that a little bit the last couple days and watching all the videos, even the far out ones where the people are like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. And then, the ones from the CDC that are saying like, okay, calm down. It's not, it is a problem. It's spreading, but it's not that big a deal. But yeah, what do you guys, do you get obsessed with things? Could you be called an OCD type person when you get into, a time of just really researching and really looking into stuff? And is that all you want to talk about with your significant other, your friends, or whatever, when you get into it? Is that all your brain will think about other than basic living? Do you get stuck? Let me know, guys. There's my story about chickens, because we're getting back to talking about chickens today. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Live and love out of the way you were created.